Hi, this is Kathy, and welcome to The Advisory, a place where you have questions, we try to answer them. Okay, so today's topic is what is a budget and how to create a budget. A budget is a spending plan that you use for a given specific amount of time. Okay, I'm going to tell you right now, I honestly hate budgets. I hate budgets. I hate budgets. And that's simply because I like to spend a lot. Okay. And I will also say I'm one of the worst staying on a budget simply because, again, I like to spend my money. So these are some things I have learned over the years that has some of that works with me, some of the things that don't work for me as that well, but they work for other people very well. And then I'm going to give you some 5 simple things that you need to do. 5 simple things that you need to do when you're on a budget. Okay. First of all, a budget is, like I said, is a spending plan, but it's not to be a spending plan that's like over a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years long. It's a budget for personal budgets. They should be probably no more than a month-to-month basis. Okay, I know, mind blown. Who would have figured? I think that's part of the reason why I actually hate staying on budgets is because I used to always think that you have to stay on a budget for like a long period of time. And it wasn't until a few years ago when I took a financial course and I was like, oh, budgets are really not that long. And so that kind of freed up my mindset right there. So first thing we want to know is that with a budget, what we need to know is how much money is coming in. How much money are we getting? Okay. So we want to take everything from odd jobs such as babysitting, lawn mowing, if you're pet sitting or house sitting, take all that income in. If you have a part-time job or a full-time job, you're going to take all that information in. So you're going to list all the money that you're having allocated coming in for that particular month. And you also really want to determine how often you are receiving that money. How often are you receiving that money? Okay. After you find out how much money you have, you want to find out how much money you need to spend for the month. Okay. So take in, for example, take in rent and mortgage payments. If you're buying a house or if you're renting a house or an apartment, you're going to have to make monthly payments. Okay. That's just how life is. So you want to take that in. You want to take in if you own a car, you want to take in gas and car insurance as well. And if you're purchasing that car or renting that car, you need to take into consider car payments. If you buy the car out of cash, you don't have to worry about car payments. But if you're renting it or if you're purchasing it from a loan, then you have to considering car payments. Then you want to consider what health insurance you have or life insurance. If you have health insurance through your jobs, chances are they're taking the money out of your check. But if you do not have health insurance through your job, you're going to have to go through there. Loans. And I'm not talking mortgage loans or car loans. I'm talking about like either college loans or personal loans, small loans. You need to make sure what payments do you have to make for those and apply those. Credit card debt. This is one area you want to be very, very careful with. Credit card debt, you want to be able to make sure that you're paying that down at all times. Now, at your age, if you're anywhere between 17 to 25, 26 years old, I highly do not recommend that you get a credit card at this time unless you are financially stable. And even then, that may not always be a really good idea. I got my first credit card when I was probably about somewhere between 19 to 21. For the first year or two, I was really good with it. But then I told you I like to spend. Okay. And I spent more than I actually had coming in. So I kind of got myself a little bit in trouble with my credit card. Other things you want to consider is emergency fund. Things are going to happen in life, things that we can't foresee. Okay. If you have a car repair, you need to have some place where you can pull that money out quickly so you have access to it. If you're in a wreck, specifically if you're in a wreck where the person who hits you is uninsured, you want to have some type of backup, especially if you do not have uninsured motorist insurance. You want to have some type of backup to where you can go pay for things quickly. Um, you also want to take in utilities such as electric, water, and waste management. Usually, if you're in an apartment, a lot of times they will take in your water and your trash fees, that they'll actually apply it towards your rent. Otherwise, you'll have to actually pay for that. And everybody originally has to pay for their own electrical bills. Cell phone and internet, that's another thing you want to consider. What is your cell phone bills? What are your internet bills? You want to make sure that as you're doing things, you're planning for that as well. Childcare, if you have a child, specifically a child who's not of school age, you're going to want to go to jobs. Who's going to take care of them? Mom and dad can't take care of them necessarily because they might be working themselves and they might need to be going places where they can't take a child. So you want to consider, are you going to go through a daycare? Are you going to go through a babysitter? And if you do those, you're going to actually have to pay for them. So you want to make sure you have child care payments taken care of. School supplies. Going to college, you're going to have a lot of school supplies. And I'll talk a little bit more about books in another video of how to get your books if you can't afford them. But the books can cost anywhere between $50 to $200. Okay? Brand new books can go anywhere from $50 to $200. So you want to be able to figure out how many books you're going to need, what books you're going to need, and figure out the cost for those. In addition to that, you're going to see if you can actually get them used. Okay? If you can get them used, that's even better because you can save a whole lot more money that way. But just plan on having to purchase new books because sometimes you have to purchase new books. Pets. If you have a pet, you might you're going to have veterinary care. You're going to need to have pet food. If you have cats or rabbits, you'll probably need to have litter boxes, just simply because, cats have to go somewhere, rabbits have to go somewhere, and dogs have to go somewhere outside. You might have a little place for, like a little mat for the dogs to actually go on. In addition to that, if you would live in an apartment, a lot of apartments actually charge something called pet rent. So not only would you have to do a pet deposit, but you might have to do something called like a pet rent, where it's about like $10 to $15, or at least when I was having to pay pet rent, it was around $10 to $15 per month per pet. So take those into consideration as well. Clothing. Our clothing do not last, so we need to have, replace our clothes. I'm sure we don't want to go around with ratty clothes all the place. So, make sure you budget in for clothing. Entertainment, okay? Movies. Going out to arcade games. Purchasing things off of, purchasing games, Netflix, cable, that's all wrapped into entertainment. Dining is also wrapped up into entertainment. It is not food. It is, unless that is your only source of food, is dining out. But dining is also considered a form of entertainment. So it would go under the entertainment budget. Then you also want to make sure you have a savings account as well. So in addition to managing all this, you want to make sure that you're saving money. And then you also have something called a miscellaneous fund. So you might want to have a miscellaneous fund to put funds in, so that way if you don't have enough to meet, like for gas for the month, you can pull that out of the miscellaneous account. If you don't have enough for food, you can pull that out of the miscellaneous account. A couple of other places, you can go out of the miscellaneous account. So those are some things that you want to consider when you're creating your budget. In addition to that, you want to schedule when your money is going to become taken out, okay? If you have a mortgage or a rent payment, you're probably going to have to pay on the first of the month. That's when they expect the payments to be done by, which means unless you have a job that pays you on the first, the month prior, you need to make sure that you have that last paycheck from the month prior is going to cover your rent or your mortgage payment. Okay, so you want to make sure it's covering the rent or the mortgage payment. So if it's March 1st is when your rent is due or your mortgage payment is due, then whenever the last time you got paid in February, it needs to go towards your March payment. Step 4 is set aside money for emergencies. Remember what I was talking about earlier? making sure you have money for emergencies. This is obviously something I consider very, 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 very strong, because there have been times when I've had emergencies that I don't know where the money was going to come from, and I want you to learn from my mistakes and my experiences, so that way you're not going to have those same mistakes and you're not going to have those same experiences. I've actually been in a wreck where, remember I was talking about the uninsured motorist? I've actually was in a wreck where it was an uninsured motorist. My insurance had actually elapsed, and so I'm the one who had to pay for everything. Emergency money is not to be used for clothing or entertainment. Okay, again, this should not be used for clothing or entertainment. It is for emergency purposes only. If for some reason you have a fire in your house and you've lost all your clothing, that is the exception. That is when you're probably going to need to go ahead and pull the money out. If you haven't already used your clothing allowance, you're wanting to go ahead and pull that out because you're going to need clothing. And that would be the same for food as well. And step number 5 is make sure that everything comes to a balance of 0. Okay, your money is always accounted for. Always account for your money. If your expenses are more than your income, what you need to do is look to see where can you cut back. Where can you cut back on those expenses? For example, can you cut back on your clothing expenses? Can you cut back on entertainment? Maybe you need to take it out of miscellaneous. The places you do not want to cut back on, are your mortgage bills. You do not want to cut back on your apartment bills, your car payments, your car insurance, because those are static. They stay. They do not change. Okay? If your income is greater, consider placing some of that extra income into savings or even into the miscellaneous pile. That way you have a rainy day fund, and then you have a backup fund for it all to go to. So that way your money is always accounted for. So here's some tips. Some of them I actually do not use, and one of them I do. So the one I don't use, but other people actually have said that works for them really well, is something called a cash envelope system. And a cash envelope system is where you take the money that is for small expenses, such as your clothing, your gas, your food, your entertainment, and you divide it up into the envelopes, whatever amount you allocated to those areas, okay? And then you use that money throughout the month, and if your money is gone before the end of the month, you don't get out of that category again, and you don't add to it either, okay? However, if you still have money at the end of the month, you leave it in that thing so you can use it for the next month, and then add whatever amount of money you want to put in there. Okay, so let's say you're not really planning on purchasing any clothing this month, but you want to add $50 into that allowance for clothing, and you keep it in there so you haven't spent it. You're going to take it to the next month, and you roll it along. You keep adding $50, and let's say within 4 months you save $200 because you haven't spent, but you need to go buy a lot of new clothing, so you can take that $200 and go spend it. So for people who this would really, 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 really probably work really well with, are people who maybe are learning to stay within a budget, and they want some way to help them make sure they stay in a budget. So cash envelope system would really work for them. Another tip, this is one I actually do, is when you're planning for major expenses, save ahead of time. Okay, so plan it through your monthly expenses to save for that trip. So that way, when you get to that trip, it's not going to be so, you know what I'm trying to say. It's not going to be so hectic. You're not going to have to worry about where the money is coming from because you already have it there. It's already been planned for. That means you plan for your transportation, you plan for your food, you plan for your hotel stay or motel stay, wherever your lodging is going to be for that trip. Okay, you plan for any entertainment. You take all that into consideration and you budget it out over a certain amount of time. These are the 5 steps that you have to make a budget. Number 1, determine how much income you have coming in for the month. Number 2, determine what money you need to spend on, whether it's clothing, entertainment, etc. Okay, number 3, determine when you're going to pay those throughout the month. Okay, are you going to pay it all at the first of the month? Are you going to pay some of it at the first of the month, some of it later on? When are you going to determine to play it? Number 4, make sure you are saving up for an emergency fund. Always save up for that emergency fund, so that way something happens, you'll have something to fall back on. Number 5, make sure that your account balance is down to 0. Okay, that doesn't mean your bank account balance is down to 0, but that when you're doing your budget, it goes down to 0. If it's over, put it either to miscellaneous or into savings. If it's under, find out what area can you take away from. Okay, and then the two tips is, number 1, consider doing a cash envelope system, and number 2, consider saving up for major expenses over a long period of time. Okay, this is Kathy with Advisory. I'll see you here.